and the nifty role of advising Hillary when she was at the State Department and getting $10,000 a month as a consultant for the Clinton Foundation. Now, what did he do for that 10 grand a month? He provided something called message guidance. I'll bet. In emails reported on by the New York Times, we learned that Blumenthal funneled advice to Secretary Clinton about things such as Libya. Now, not because he had any unique experience on North African affairs, but because a friend of his wanted to do business there. What a guy. Now, fast forward to the present day. The Grassley-Graham criminal referral contains this. One memorandum by Mr. Steele that was not published by BuzzFeed is dated October 19, 2016. It states that his company, quote, received this report from, redacted, U.S. State Department, that the report was the second in a series and that the report was information that came from a foreign subsource who, quote, is in touch with, redacted, a contact of, redacted, a friend of the Clintons, who passed it to, redacted. It is troubling enough that the Clinton campaign funded Mr. Steele's work, but that these Clinton associates were contemporaneously feeding Mr. Steele allegations raises additional concerns about his credibility. Now, this is important because we had been led to believe that Steele's dossier's sources for that infamous mess were Russian. Well, it turns out that they may have been Clinton black ops specialists laundering information to Steele through the Obama State Department. It's wild. Now, who might those Clinton associates be? Last month, Senators Grassley and Graham sent letters out to the DNC asking them to produce any communications they had with Sidney Blumenthal and Cody Shearer between March 2016 and January 2017. Now, we'll get to Shearer in a moment, but this is where the plot thickens. Now, assuming Grassley and Graham's allegations are true, Blumenthal and Cody Shearer may be responsible for the nasty, salacious claims against Trump in that dossier. It certainly would fit their profile. Now, Blumenthal is a smear artist extraordinaire, and his sidekick, Cody Shearer, is a longtime Clinton ally known to them as Mr. Fixer. In the words of the Weekly Standard, Shearer is one of the most disreputable characters in Washington. He last turned up in a ProPublica report in 2015 about Sidney Blumenthal's hacked emails. Now, those emails revealed that Shearer, get this, was running a, quote, secret spy network that fed Hillary Clinton information on Libya and Benghazi when she was Secretary of State. So he had been back-channeling information to the Obama State Department for a long time. Now, if these allegations that Blumenthal and Shearer were at least some of Steele's sources for that dossier, if that proves true, the Clintons' fingerprints, their closest associates, their hitmen fixers, are all over this thing. They funded the creation of the fake dossier, and then Mrs. Clinton's parasitic proxies fed information to Christopher Steele with one objective: destroy Donald Trump by any means necessary. And that's the angle. Joining us now, former Hillary Clinton advisor Philippe Reines and former Clinton advisor Dick Morris, and the author of the new book, Rogue Spooks, with Eileen, and along with Wall Street Journal columnist Kim Strassel. All right, I brought a special prop. I'm not a prop person, but I have a gavel, and in case things get really nasty between Morris and Reines.
Just don't use that on our heads.
Don't worry, don't worry.
On the table. Just
all right, and Kimberly, don't worry, you're in on this action too.
I'm not a man of violence.
All right, let's start with Morris here, because Dick, first of all, I want to congratulate you. You're wearing the Brit Hume Boca Raton sweater tonight, so that you already win points. Tell me about this idea, and we heard it from Trey Gowdy, that at least part of this dossier, part of the information in it, came from Sid Blumenthal. Then we'll talk about Cody Shearer.
Yeah, I said this on your show last week, that they couldn't publish the negative research that Shearer and Blumenthal did under Shearer and Blumenthal's names because they were so discredited.
On Trump.
On Trump. So they laundered it through Steele. They found Steele, who had an excellent record as a foreign service person, head of the Russia Bureau at MI6 for a decade, and he had a good relationship with the FBI. And they felt that if they laundered it through Steele and it was presented as Steele's work, there would be a better chance of it being taken seriously. And I believe that most of the dossier was written by Shearer and Blumenthal. First of all, knowing Hillary, they are the Class A dirty ops, black ops people she goes to. And Hillary at one point called me in the '96 campaign and said, I really want you to get to know Sidney Blumenthal.
Or you.
And then Bill followed it up and said, did Hillary talk to you about Sidney? And I said, yeah. And then every time I met with Sidney every week, I would call Hillary. And he was the dirty tricks operative. I remember I wanted to know Dole's position on something. He was our opponent. And he wasn't saying. So I asked Blumenthal, who was allegedly a journalist for New Yorker, to ask Dole the question. And Dole answered it, and I used it in a negative ad. Now,
but this doesn't mean that he's necessarily the source of the dossier. I mean, the fact that he did all this stuff in the 90s, how do we jump to the conclusion that he necessarily did this? And I want to get Philippe on this. Philippe, you know, look, you heard what Gowdy said. Sid obviously has a long history. He was so radioactive that even Rahm Emanuel banned him from the Obama White House, didn't want any part of him in the White House, because he believed that Blumenthal was behind all the negative stuff that came out about Obama in the 2008 campaign, which they were right about. So what of this?
Well, let me say that I agree with something Dick said, which is that Chris Steele is a renowned MI6 agent and Foreign Service agent. And if his theory is correct as to why they funneled or laundered it through him, then you've got a problem. Because I think Dick just inadvertently gave credence to the rest of the dossier.
oh, no.
Trey Gowdy didn't say who it was, but let's just stipulate that his hinting.
Come on.
Let's say it's
Devin Nunes did the same thing.
I've never heard of Cody Shearer. No one's going to believe that. I just have never heard the name. Sid, I think Dick knows, despite colorful.
Then you haven't been around the Clintons.
You haven't worked with the Clintons as long as I have.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually have. And I wasn't fired by them. But the more important thing is,
that's a low blow.
Sid, you know Sid.
Twice
Sid is a lot more of a character than you're portraying. Okay. I'm not defending him. But I think the most important thing is the notion that the dossier was written by Sid Blumenthal is crazy. That's not what happened. Chris Steele wrote the dossier. Chris Steele.
Right. Yeah, let's get to Kim on this.
And Devin Nunes has said that much in it is real.
Kimberly, go ahead.
Let's talk about Christopher Steele for a little bit, because the importance of the Grassley memo today is that it provides proof, information, that Mr. Steele went to the FBI and supposedly he was so worried about the country and Donald Trump, and yet he broke FBI cardinal rules. He undermined the FBI. The FBI had admonished him not to speak to anyone, and yet he went running out to sit down with Glenn Simpson, an opposition research firm, and brief all of their buddies in the press in September in order to create negative headlines against Donald Trump. He blew the FBI's operation, put it out there in the public, and then the Hillary Clinton campaign capitalized on it in the days following. So tell me how we view this man as a stand-up MI6 agent that can be trusted. If he understood the rules of the game, he would not have broken all of the FBI's rules. He strikes me as a political operator who was, by the way, on record of saying that he was absolutely opposed to Donald Trump ever becoming president.
Dick.
I think that I'm not defending Christopher Steele. I do want to point out, though, that Steele said in a deposition on the civil lawsuit that he got a lot of his material from an outside source, unsolicited, he said. And let's remember that this guy, who was the bureau chief at MI6, wrote a dossier that said prostitutes were peeing on the bed, that Steve Cohn is the guy who arranged the collusion, and Cohn had never been to Prague where it took place.
He said Carter Page met with individuals he had never met with.
That a guy who was serving a 40-year sentence for pedophilia in the Gulag was the one who hacked Hillary's DNC computer. 80% of that dossier is so clearly a lie. And 40%
if
of it
20% is real,
40%,
President Trump has a big problem.
40% of it is the story about Steve
again,
Cohen.
Between Dick Morris and Devin Nunes giving credence to the dossier.
Here's the thing. Is
But
Democrats...
go
ahead, real quick.
Could we hear what the 20% is that's true?
Yeah.
I don't
or
know.
Even the 10 or the 5?
Bob Mueller. Guys.
Bob Mueller is going to tell us.
Is this a standard now? You can spy on an American citizen with a document that his provenance is unclear, whose agent behind the document has violated the norms of intelligence by sharing this information with the press before it was even, looks like, submitted to the FISA court. And the FBI itself knew that the origin of this document was funded by a political opposition, not just an opposition person, but the opposition candidate. If you can spy on an American on that basis, I find it to be terrifying. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or somewhere in between.
But that's not the basis.
That is terrifying.
The basis for the warrant, as we've learned, is that George Papadopoulos, the coffee boy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's a real reason to spy on an American.
Don't hit it to the coffee boy.
28-year-old kid goes into a bar
and
but it's not the
boasts
dossier.
all about how.
But it's not the dossier.
Boasts all about how great he is and how wired he is with everything.
Once the FISA warrant was granted, Carter Page was listened in on, and every 90 days they renewed it for 3 times.
On the same phony basis.
No.
Same phony basis.
You can't renew it unless it's based on what the 90 days have provided.
The same, Kimberly, on the idea. No, Kimberly.
So the Grassley.
Go ahead. Didn't they conclude that the dossier was a significant part, if not the instrumental part, of the FISA application, without which the FISA application would not have been filed? McCabe did say that in the testimony on Capitol Hill, the closed door.
He said that, and the Grassley-Graham referral, which, by the way, quotes from the FISA application. It's the first time we've seen text from the FISA application. Said that the FISA application relied, quote, heavily on 2 pieces of information, on the dossier and then on a Yahoo News article that was inspired by Christopher Steele as well, and meant to suggest that somehow there was corroboration. And by the way, the Grassley-Graham referral also, and this is very important, reveals to us that even Comey admitted in front of the Senate Judiciary that we have evidence that they weren't able to independently verify the dossier or this article.
Comey
and when he was asked
why,
Comey said that, and so when he was asked why they nonetheless ran with it, he said, well, because Christopher Steele's a reliable guy.
Okay.
And yet this is a guy, again, who broke FBI rules.
Ron Johnson swung and a miss. Devin Nunes swung and missed. Grassley is taking the baton from them, and he's trying the same thing to muddy the water. We should talk about the text messages.
Did Blumenthal come up with that line?
Messages.
I'm kidding. I'm
Sidney
kidding.
Blumenthal.
Let's go to Britt.
I just like to
made
notice.
up the story.
Go ahead.
That Perot.
Can I point out?
Investigated his daughter's fiance.
Okay, you're going to Perot now, Dick.
2018.
We're not going to go to Ross Perot.
Because he was an anti-Semite and didn't want his daughter marrying a Jew. And Blumenthal wrote that in the New Republic.
I get all that. Okay, I'm going to hit. Philippe's hitting. He's going to hit me with it. All right, fantastic segment. Fantastic segment.
Button. I don't know how it translates.
The FBI lovebirds, by the way, we just talked about, have struck again. One of their texts raises more questions about whether President Obama had any involvement or asking any questions about the FBI's Russia meddling investigation. And up next, Jim Jordan is our expert panel analyzing that potential bombshell. Philippe is now getting hit with the gavel. Stay with us. A newly released text between FBI agents is raising questions about what former President Obama said about his lack of involvement in federal investigations. On September 2nd, 2016, Lisa Page texted her friend, Peter Strzok, about the need to create talking points for then FBI Director Jim Comey. That was because she texted, quote, POTUS, the president, wants to know everything we are doing. Now, that would appear to contradict what then President Obama told Fox's Chris Wallace 5 months earlier.
Not talk to the Attorney General about pending investigations. I do not talk to FBI directors about pending investigations. We have a strict line and always have maintained it.
Joining us now with more is James Freeman of the Wall Street Journal, who joins us from New York. Republican Congressman Jim Jordan is here in the studio, as is Democratic strategist Scott Bolden. Congressman.
Yep.
Your sense on this. Now, the Democrats are saying This is not a big deal. This is the president being engaged on the subject of Russian collusion and interference in the election, which a president of the United States should be informed about.
You got to take it in context. This is September 2nd. Remember, July 5th is the day they say we're not going to charge Clinton. Comey does his now famous press conference and say no charges will be brought. Later that same month, Peter Strzok, the same guy who ran the Clinton investigation, opens the Russia-Trump investigation. 2 weeks later, August 14th, we have the text message from Strzok and Page where Peter Strzok says we need an insurance policy in case the American people actually make Donald Trump president. And then 2 weeks after that, September 2nd, they say POTUS needs to know everything we are doing. So take it in context. I think it raises lots of concerns, lots of suspicion. That's why we need to look into it and find out exactly what's going on.
Scott.
Well, listen, Barack Obama's not walking through that White House door. He's a private citizen. And the mere fact that you have dates, you have these details, it all amounts to conjecture. Doesn't amount to anything definite. You can look into it if you want, but we got a Russian investigation as to whether Russia meddled in our elections and whether Donald Trump connected to that, had any collusion or had anything to do with that investigation. We ought to be focused on that. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, that ought to be the focus. These dates and these possibilities and conjecture are a waste of time, Laura.
Here's the broader context. The broader context is you have all these text messages where they say Trump is awful, Trump shouldn't win, he should lose $100 million to zero.
Doesn't mean the investigation is
bias and
tainted
animus
at all.
against him is
It means they had a political view, but doesn't mean it's tainted. And even the Pfizer warning, the memo, doesn't mean anything's tainted.
It's not just bias. They took action.
Let's get James Freeman in here. James, you hear the discussion. The spin today from the Democrats was this is easily explained because the president should be aware of any efforts to investigate, as the chief executive officer of the government, investigate a Russian effort to meddle in the election, regardless of what political party is involved. Your response?
Well, it does sound like progress if Democrats are acknowledging that the FBI, the Justice Department do report to the president, that they're not an authority unto themselves. But I think it really does get to this question of who did authorize going to a judge and getting a warrant to spy on the political opposition. Quite a distance from I never talked to the FBI director about pending investigations to not only did he talk, but he wanted to know everything they were doing. And I think now the question for Mr. Obama is, did you realize this evidence was so thin? Did he know what they were doing going to the judge in the FISA court with this politically generated
hold on.
material?
There are a couple things here. Yeah, well, I think it is wild to think that in the middle of a heated presidential election cycle, with the Justice Department, the FBI, ready to spy on an American, not to go to the president. See, I think that would be weird not to say, look, yes, we're about to do this. We thought we should give you a heads up. And go to the president and say, this is what we're putting together. We think you should be apprised of this. Do you think this is okay?
Maybe.
I just think
what's inappropriate about that?
Did they tell him the full story? Your previous segments, the DNC and the Clinton campaign hire Steele to produce the dossier, and they also told him what to put in the dossier. So did they tell him the whole story?
Well, what was in the dossier? Exactly. I don't know. Or who paid for the dossier? Probably not. Scott, and then I got to play something.
One time, I'd love to come on this show or any show and debate the GOP about facts, not conjecture, about facts, not guessing. We don't even know whether Barack Obama even asked for that information. You're relying on the text of Lisa Bass.
Well, they're contemporaneous, and you know, Scott, you're a lawyer as I am. Contemporaneous, recordings, whether it's in text messages or vocal recordings, text messages are quite reliable in court because they're contemporaneous. There's no reason for him to lie about. It's no reason for him or her to say either of them to say. He wants to know everything. Why would they say that? If the president didn't want to know everything, that's an odd thing to.
That's how they're processing it. He may have said, "What about the briefing?"
Obama's proxy, and I'm going to call him a proxy, Eric Holder, was on another network tonight with Rachel Maddow, and I want the congressman to respond. Let's watch.
The real problem here is the president. The president going after named career people, the president saying things about the integrity of those two institutions, the Justice Department, the FBI. No other president has ever said those kinds of things, conducted himself in that way, and he's doing long-term harm. I think any one of my kids would make a better president than Donald Trump.
No, that's hilarious, Eric.
No other FBI has taken a campaign opposition research document, taken it to a secret court to get a secret warrant to spy on a fellow American citizen. I mean, that is unbelievable. And think about this. Comey is gone. McCabe is leaving. Jim Baker, the general counsel, has been demoted and reassigned.
Like flies.
Lisa Page has been demoted and reassigned. Peter Strzok has been demoted and reassigned. Jim Rubicki, chief of staff for James Comey, is leaving the FBI. That's who we're talking about.
All Republican-driven.
When have you ever seen the top people, the seventh floor people of the FBI, that many leave this organization? That's the problem, and that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. And look at, and the text messages give context to the whole mindset of these people who ran the Clinton investigation and then launched and ran the Trump-Russia investigation.
Can you do that backwards really fast? Go.
He's got it down pat.
Listen, come on. What was that time?
The GOP, listen, the Pfizer warrant was not, the dossier was not the basis of that Pfizer warrant.
We're back at that.
Can we agree with that?
You know
Can
what?
we just agree with that?
James, we got to get the last word to Freeman. He's stuck out there in New York.
What they led with on the application.
All right, let's go to Freeman.
Maybe not.
I think we'd like to hear from
guys.
the judge. I think we'd like to hear from the judge whether that judge would have wanted the full story on
I'd love to hear from him,
Pfizer.
too.
And as you said, these do not look like middle management decisions. These look like pretty high-level decisions to spy on your political adversary. Let's find out who made them.
All right. You know what I want to know? I want to know who the FISA judge is. I'm sick of these secret judges able to hide. I want to know who the judges are, and I want to know why there's no sanctions being levied against lawyers who are omitting material facts from these secret applications. I think it needs a sanction. If I were the judge, wait, where's my gavel? Here's my gavel. Ready? Sanctions. All right, guys. And then there's this, an 8-hour speech.
Judges to be disclosed?
And you're now for FISA judges? The Democrats were all against it after 9/11. You guys were all against FISA. You're now for FISA. All right. You guys hated FISA, and now you're for FISA. All right. Then there's all right, an 8-hour speech from Nancy Pelosi today on behalf of you, the American citizens? No, the Dreamers. And she wasn't the only Democrat using illegal immigrants as pawns. You've got to see this stuff to believe it. Up next. A pair of stunts by Democrats today seem to answer the question, do they really care about the so-called Dreamers? First, Congressman Luis Gutierrez used a Dreamer, in my view, as a prop on CNN to attack the president.
It's really a sad situation because he was supposed to be the adult in the room.
I heard a bully, someone that is picking on people that are afraid, that are scared, that are younger than him and smaller than him.
Then Nancy Pelosi used DACA as an excuse for an 8-hour pseudo-filibuster to stall a budget deal today. Some things we didn't hear her address, let me think, MS-13, rapes, robberies, heroin rings, child abuse stabbings, drunk driving fatalities. Oh, no. But she did find time today to preach.
To minister to the needs of God's creation, and we're all God's creation, is an act of worship. To ignore those needs is to dishonor the God who made us.
Thank you, Pastor Nancy. Let's discuss this with Monica Crowley in New York. She's a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. And here in Washington is Ali Noorani, executive director of the National Immigration Forum. All right, Ali, I have to give Nancy Pelosi credit. She's up there for 8 hours. You know, she's not, 40. And she's up there for 8 hours on 4-inch heels. And she's going for it. And you get all the women behind her, Sheila Jackson Lee. So no one nodded off, which was amazing. But she's up there and she's doing her thing. But my question is, has Nancy Pelosi ever done something remotely like this for any victims of illegal immigrant crime? I don't believe she ever mentioned Kate Steinle's name in her district, who was murdered by an illegal immigrant. And I don't believe she's ever addressed the issue of gangs in Oakland or any other part of California, LA, her state. And yet 8 hours for the so-called Dreamers.
You know, the amazing part about today was not only Nancy Pelosi standing up for 7 hours making the case for Dreamers, but also on the Senate side, you have Senator James Langford joining independent senator from Maine, Angus King, calling for a bipartisan solution. The thing here, Laura, is that President Trump has the opportunity to make the deal of a lifetime. He can get a win. He can be the one standing up, giving that victory speech. He can even have a parade where Dreamers are walking by and saying, Mr. President, thank you for protecting us, and thank you for protecting our border.
Could we put the Dreamers in the military parade? That would be fun.
You know what? They
could actually ride on top of the missiles down Pennsylvania Avenue. I'd come to that parade and fly every flag known to humanity.
Amazing part about that is that 900
that would actually be fun.
900 DACA recipients have enlisted or have applied to enlist in the Army. That's an amazing number of people who are.
Guess what? In my view, they'd all get a pass right into citizenship. Monica, let's go to you on this, because Nancy Pelosi does have stamina. You got to hand it to her. She wants that gavel back in her hand in November. She wants that gavel, or in January of next year. They want to take back the House. The Dreamers, the Latino coalition, they're a key part for the Democrats to take back the House of Representatives. I think it was much about that as anything else today.
Yes, absolutely. Although the Democrats are constantly putting non-citizens ahead of American citizens, which is not exactly a political winner. Look, Laura, you either have a country that's based on the rule of law or you don't. And the Democrats don't much care about the rule of law, because their goal is to legalize as many of these people as possible, not because they care about them, but because their primary objective is to create a permanent Democrat voting majority. So while the left is very effective, as Nancy Pelosi was today, in casting their views and their policies and their approaches in emotional, three-hanky kind of ways, and then using the echo chamber of the left-wing media to portray them that way, the American people understand here what this is all about, and they know. And stunts like this, like Gutierrez and Pelosi, this is the same old routine. And you know what, Laura? It doesn't have the same traction as it used to, because popular sentiment is actually with President Trump on this, including many in the Democratic base who want better jobs and better wages without the drag on those things from illegal immigration.
Well, 1.8 million Dreamers, DACA recipients, were going to get amnesty. That was on the table. And Trump said, okay, we got to end this chain migration, because that's exploding immigration. We got to end the visa lottery. The Democrats did not want to give him a win on that. He did have a win on that. And the Democrats had an opportunity. They cared about the Dreamers. 1.8 million would have gotten amnesty. Now they're going to get nothing.
And the amazing part about it is that President Trump also had a great deal in his hands, in that Senator Schumer was willing to give him $25 billion for a wall.
But that no chain migration, right? That was the rub.
That's the deal that the president wanted.
But then he gave him more. He gave him $1 million more amnesty. He upped it to him 1.8.
How many more billions of dollars do we want on the border?
Well, I think in the end, we'll see how this works out in November. But this is a political power play for Pelosi, and she's pretty smart at how she does it. Thank you both. Great segment. And by the way, nothing says the Me Too movement like naked supermodels. Yes, I just said that. Up next, we're going to show you what happens when Sports Illustrated tries to put a feminist spin on its annual swimsuit edition. Time now for our Seen and Unseen segment, where we expose what's really going on behind the big culture stories of the day. We kick it off with a doozy. What happens when the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition hits the Me Too era? Forget swimsuits. The models are wearing nothing but buzzwords. I kid you not. To make some sense of this and share this another sweet story coming up as well, Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo. Raymond, swimsuit edition, no swimsuits, but a hashtag on the model.
And I'm sorry, this is no way. If
what our daughter is supposed to aspire to?
Well, this is supposed to raise awareness of respect for women.
Joke there, I'm not going to make
sexual awareness, sexual abuse awareness. This is an odd way to do it by putting, the first time in history, Sports Illustrated does a nude spread.
And all women edited this edition. Yeah. It was an all-female cast editing this edition. I don't know what they're editing. They didn't edit much. Here's what the editor, MJ Day, said of this experience. She said, it's about allowing women to exist in the world without being harassed or judged, regardless of how they like to present themselves.
Well, women may read the words, men are reading the curves, I can promise you. And when I saw this, I thought, this is a photo spread a Me Too protest that Harvey Weinstein could have produced.
Oh, my gosh.
It's an outrage.
It's embarrassing.
Really
Ladies,
dumb.
embarrassing yourselves. Father-daughter dance canceled in New York, Staten Island, Public School 65. My daughter's gone to a father-daughter dance, and she goes with a friend or surrogate grandfather, and she has a great time.
Well, they're saying there's
That's a Catholic school, though.
The public schools have a code that you don't want to violate anyone's gender identification, and by calling it a father-daughter dance, they're saying you're excluding people. But I don't quite understand this. If you're a mother who identifies as a father, go to the father-daughter dance. If you're a father who identifies as a mother, go to the mother-son dance.
You know what I'm doing? I'm staying home. I find this whole thing. This is a different type of dance. It's not the dances I'm used to.
But no one should stay home. These are beautiful events for a mother and son and a father and daughter. They leave lasting memories. Why should it be ruined for everybody? Down the street at
Well, they want to ruin the
PS30.
Boy Scouts. They want to ruin the Girl Scouts. They want to ruin fraternities, all male clubs, all female clubs. You can't have any fun with a particular group because everybody has to be in it. Then there is no special place. It's all everyone's everything.
Down at PS30, they have something called a fudge dance, which is fun with uncles, dads.
What?
fun. I'm reading.
The studio doesn't want to know where this is going.
Fun with uncles, dads, grandfathers, etc. So look for the etc. daughter dance or the etc. son dance.
Okay, Raymond.
Everybody will be happy then.
What's the good feel-good story?
The most uplifting story of the week. Gerber Baby has chosen its spokesbaby for the year. It is a little boy named Lucas Warren. He's the first child in 90 years to have Down syndrome, a special needs child, chosen as the Gerber Baby. It's such a lesson and a witness. Remember, 67 to 90% of children with Downs are aborted. This is a really important lesson for the beauty and the need for every life, and that these people are valued and loved and should be.
Every life has worth and merit, and that made my night
Me
week.
too.
Thank you for
we needed to clean the palate.
That is awesome. Raymond, you're not going to believe, by the way, that it was an immigrant trained by Al-Qaeda who got a chain migration visa who now is in the crosshairs of our counterterrorism authorities. You're not going to believe what he was up to. We'll come back and we'll bring you that story. In case you probably haven't heard much about, the FBI has arrested a Saudi immigrant who reportedly attended Al-Qaeda's most notorious training camp, the very one used by the 9/11 hijackers. What alerted the feds? They say Naif Afalajad used a fraudulent visa to, get this, take flying lessons, just like the 9/11 gang. So how did he get the bogus visa? According to prosecutors, he simply lied about his background, including whether he had supported terrorists or had contacts with a terrorist group. Afalaj entered the country in 2011 on a non-immigrant visa, using his wife's status as a foreign student. He's been living near Oklahoma City. How did our system allow this guy in? And how many others like him are out there? Remember, poorly vetted immigrants were suspects in the botched attack on New York subways in December, the truck attack on a bike path in New York that killed 8 and injured 11 last October, and the 2015 mass shooting in San Bernardino, California that killed 14 and wounded 22. Here with analysis is former FBI counterterror official Terry Turchi in San Francisco. Terry, this seems all too familiar, the pattern of the jihadis who managed to get their way into the United States, lying about their background, and then in this case with the Saudi immigrant, the guy was signing up for flying lessons. How does this happen?
It's totally too familiar, Laura, and here's what happened. Going back to 2000, he was in the camp over in Afghanistan. By 2001, we had 9/11 hit us. Of course, he was long gone, but after 9/11, the Army went in there and found a bunch of documents, and on those documents were about 15 fingerprints. And in a way, this is kind of a success story, but it's also a very frightening story as to what we face in the future, because they went ahead and they sent those documents in here to the Bureau, and the fingerprints were then recorded in the Bureau's files. So about 2011, Naif actually comes to the United States because his wife was here, and he comes on a non-immigrant visa. Now, that was a big problem during the 9/11 situation. So he stays till about 2016, and by October of 2016, he's got himself a private pilot's license. So he's pretty pleased with that. 5 months later, because of the requirement that you have to have your major case prints taken and sent into to the government, to the FBI, he'd done that. He's got his license. And then several months after that, they get these compared, and they do the matches, and they find out that, wait a minute, we've already got these prints here. These are 15 prints from documents taken out of an Al-Qaeda training camp. And so all of that is a great way to kind of start this story towards its next chapter. That's a great story of terrorism prevention, and that's the way everything's supposed to work. And it's almost the community, its entirety. It's the U.S. Army doing the raid and making sure they collected everything right.
Right, but you know,
it's the
I get it. No, I get it. It's a good story, but the fact that we allow ourselves to be in this position of having to prevent these attacks by these people coming into the United States, the extreme vetting that we're supposed to be doing. Extreme vetting. I keep remembering it's extreme vetting. Trump said we're going to do extreme vetting. You're not going to catch everyone through extreme vetting. I mean, look at what happened in San Bernardino. Tafshin Malik, she just lied on her application when she came in on the fiancé visa, right? She lied and she gave a fake home address. The home address didn't even exist. Tafshin Malik, look at that, lovely. Yeah, so she lied, and then they end up shooting up that place. People dead. I mean, I don't know why we continue to have such a liberal policy with allowing people in from these hot spots. And I say thank God for Trump's, the temporary ban on people from these hotspot countries.
Well, his travel ban plus what he wants to do with his overall immigration plan is exactly the way to go. And look at it like this. Look at it by the numbers. Just taking the last few years since 9/11, over 1 million people almost have come in here through various means of visas. And we can't even determine from a fraction of those anything from these visa applications. Most of this falls through the cracks, and we still don't have biometrics. And that's the real sad part. When you look at the 9/11 Commission and you look at what they were saying way back, not too long after 9/11, we've got to deal with this whole immigration, these vulnerabilities, and we still haven't addressed the vast majority of them. And remember, 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 were Saudis, and six of the 19. Go ahead.
All right. Well, they're not on the watch list, though. They're not on the barred from travel to the United States list. That's another problem. I think this is way too much for us to handle, keeping the right people in and out of this country. Great segment. We'll be right back.